Welcome back to Crafting a Meaningful Life. I'm Mary Crafts, your host, and today's guest, she and I have discovered that we're like twinners, okay? Marni Battista, welcome to my podcast.
I'm so excited to be here and can't believe we have so much in common.
Okay, so to the listeners, let's catch you up on what we already know. And that is that when her PR person introduced me to Marni, she said she runs the Institute for Living Courageously. And immediately I was hooked. You guys know that my big mission in life is to help people become fearless and to live that courageous life that they've always believed was inside of them. So when I understood that she started an institute about living courageously, I'm like, I'm in. I'm totally in. Then I started reading about how that she is really helping people let go of what they should do. She's also done with shooting all over herself. And I'm like, you guys know, you listen, that's part of my gig. And then this morning when we were on talking before this podcast, we discovered that what? Well, right now we both live in the mountains. She lives in Steamboat Springs, Colorado. I live in Salt Lake City, Utah. But originally, we're both from Iowa, like 30 miles from each other.
Like, who's from Iowa? Who's from Iowa?
That's
Mary
crazy.
Crafts and Marni Battista are from Iowa.
We're here, and you can tell it must be a cool place because look how we ended up, right?
Exactly.
All right, Marni, so let's catch people up a little bit about how you kind of got to the position of starting this Institute for Courageous Living. Is that, living courageously.
Yeah, living courageously.
And, and why you're on this path now.
Well, it's interesting. So, they always say you teach what you needed to learn. So when I first started my business over 15 years ago, I was divorced and single, and I was having a challenging time dating, and I wanted to write a book about it. And while the book idea was funny and hilarious and now would probably be a bestseller, at the time, they were like, even back then, they were like, you don't have a platform, like you don't have a business, right? You can't,
right.
And today it would be even harder, I'm sure. But I didn't even know what a platform was. I was like, is that a shoe? Like, tell me about that. But it all hit me in this moment in my kitchen where I was like, wait, what the work that I'm meant to do is to help women find love, fall in love with themselves and find someone to love. So I started doing that. And I helped women find love pretty quickly and pretty easily. And what happened was that in the process of really falling in love with themselves and understanding what it means to be vulnerable, to have a big dream, to aspire to have a life that is aligned in always, not just in the love department. People were staying with me, working with me for 3 years, 5 years, 7 years. They started to really redesign their entire lives. And when someone asked me, Mary, I hired a business consultant. We sat down. He was like, so what's the soul of your business? And I was like, oh my gosh. Well, the soul of my business is about living courageously. Right? Like you can't do really anything. Right. Without that, right? And so what I realized is that's really what I had been teaching women to do. I was just applying it to different areas of their life, and the area in which they started was love. But that, and I also really felt strongly about this, and this is why I really shifted my whole business and expanded it, is because part of the marketing, right? Like we all have to market, right? And one of the shoulds that I was following was like doing what the marketing gurus were telling me, right? So I had to tell people like, if you find love, then every problem you ever had in your life is going to go away.
Yeah.
And that's obviously not
That's
true,
obviously
right?
not the right thing.
But as a dating coach, right? Like we have to tell you, like you have everything in your life and you fix this one thing, like everything's going to be amazing. And as I really dove into what's the soul of my business, I was like, my soul needs to align with what I really do. And that's when I just shifted, like 5 years ago, started shifting everything in my life and started realizing all the pre-programmed shoulds that I had inside of me that I didn't even know were there, because I really literally believed that was the truth. And I didn't believe that I was capable or trusted myself of following my own path.
Right.
And it all kind of came together in a big, beautiful rebrand and expansion and more alignment. And then in turn, my own life became very much more aligned to my soul and what it's here to do.
Yeah, I love this. So on the love journey, I was married to the same man for 28 years, have all my 3 children with him. And then finally at age 55, realized, well, I had realized since my honeymoon, can I just say? But
Yeah.
my culture was saying, you should stay. You should. You need to. He's the father of your children. You should. And the moment my last one graduated from high school, I was able finally to say to myself, I don't have any shoulds anymore. I'm done with this. I'm moving on. And to go through that dating process now as an older woman,
Yeah.
was an adventure in self-discovery. But the piece that I discovered, Marni, was that, and I know this is a common catchphrase, but it is really true, and that is that it's not about finding the one that you love. It is more about finding you and loving you. And when you actually fall in love with who you are and the strong woman that has made it to this point,
Yeah.
you become irresistible. I mean, like,
Well, you just gave a commercial for my business, right? Yeah. So, and I still have that date. I mean, I still help people with dating, and it's called the 5 Keys to Being Irresistible. And it really does start. And it really does start with falling. I used to say, like, you fall in love with yourself, and then you find someone to love, and then you create a life you love, right? And it all just sort of, it's like the domino effect. But if you don't have that very strong foundation of self love and really accepting who you are at that soul level, and doing that healing work as a lifestyle, it doesn't matter, because the thing is with the should life is that we've been programmed to climb the ladder to nowhere of what we think is going to make us successful, which is why people stay in marriages for, years and years after.
28 years.
28 years, right? Because we believe that, like, well, if I just have children, then we'll be, then it'll be happy. If my kids are if they do well, then, I'll be happy. If I just get them out the door, then I'll be happy. And then you wake up and you're like, wait, I did that. I'm still not happy. And I have less birthdays ahead than I do behind. So I better actually figure this shit out.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what happens. And so when you get to that point where you check the boxes, whatever your boxes are, and you still feel like something's missing, you know that there's some other work to do. And it takes a shit ton of courage, the older we are, to let go of the things that have given us a feeling of rootedness or security, but it really isn't real. It's just the stuff. And that's why we have to, again, come back to home in ourselves, so then we can let go of all that stuff and then recreate from the inside out. So, yeah, I mean, you're living it.
Well, I truly am. Like I said, you have no idea how much we have in common. As I was reading this part, I want to read that to my listeners, that's on your website. That is my life, Marni. That's the life I lived. And it is like, this is the grindstone. This is my nose. I'm going to put it on that grindstone. I'm going to leave it there until it's a bloody mess, because that's what I should do. And that it's not about being happy. It's about being successful. I lived I was the person that you described in here. And now my happiness level compared to that, it's nuts. Okay, listeners, just bear with me. You're going to understand as I read this. This is like what's my life for so long. And really, to be honest with you, it's why Marni and I do what we do now, is because I don't want you to have to wait until you're 55.
Amen.
I want you to start living it now.
Yeah.
I don't want you to wait until you're 70 to find the love of your life. I want you to live your fullest now, and that's what she wants. Just listen to this. Okay, this is her opening on. I've included all these links at the end of the podcast, so just click on. You'll find her website. You can follow her on Instagram, LinkedIn. But this is what the beginning it says. Why you're here. If you could create your whole life any way you want it, what would it look like? And what are you waiting for? Well, for me, I was waiting until I got rich. What kind of nonsense is that? Okay, she goes on. She says, if you're someone who grew up with a specific idea of what your amazing, successful life would look like, and you've worked like hell to make it happen, in spite of all you've accomplished so far, it's all coming to a cost. It's all coming at a cost because every day feels like an exhausting struggle. Okay, if I sound like I'm feeling that, I am. Okay, and damn it, you want more. More freedom and more fun. You don't want to give up your income and your security or your lifestyle. But so what do? That's just you that I'm talking about here. Listen, by anyone's measure, you're successful, right? But you're busting your ass to do it. Not only that it comes at the expense of everything else. She says, we feel you. I mean, you want what you want, but you can't go on like this, right? What if you could have your whole life any way you wanted it? Now that's a
I got the chills.
That's a pretty big promise, Marni. If you could snap your fingers and replace all that struggle and stress with ease and joy and peace and success, and your results were not only astonishing, but felt effortless. Does that sound good? That's how she starts her website.
Oh, thank you for sharing that.
Marni, that is like phenomenal. And then on top of that, I actually spent some time on your website and I looked through all the ways that you're doing and the ways that and the things you've got here and your podcast. And now you have a new book coming out. Tell us about your new book. You have some concrete things that are actually moving the needle. So tell us about your book.
Yeah. So I had that moment myself. You know, like I said, we teach what we needed to learn, right? And so that was me. And in February 2020, right before everyone went on lockdown, I was skiing at Whistler.
In Canada. Yeah. I've been there, skied there.
Yep. And I was doing like a little girls' afternoon skiing, and it was a beautiful day, and it was snowing, and it was just like one of those magical days. And I was a follower. I'm a follower, right? And this is a metaphor.
Is that then or now? Because you don't seem like a follower.
This was in 2020.
Okay.
And I was with my friend. And I talk about this in the book. And what happens is I follow my friend down a double black diamond. And I end up breaking 7 bones in my sacrum. That's where the story starts.
Wow.
Of my book. Being forced to do nothing, not being able to move, not being able to write, not being able to do anything, while life was happening downstairs for many months, it really forced me to really look at how I had built my life. And I received this very insightful reflection that I had built my life from my head, from what I thought I should do. And that the reason I broke my sacrum, because your sacrum is your foundation of your physical self, was that because I had to rebuild my life and how I was doing it in a whole way, in a soul-driven way, and let go of the shoulds. And that message came through loud and clear. And that was really the beginning of me finding a path of, well, if I can't blow up the life I have. I mean, I have bills to pay. I have a house. I have a family. I have a husband. I can't just chuck it all and go to Bali. How would I do it?
Well, actually, you could, but you know.
You could, but like, I loved those things, right?
Yeah.
And I loved what I did, and I didn't want to run away from it, right? I wanted to confront what was really going on that was deeper. And I was grateful that I wasn't paralyzed, so I felt like
Yeah.
I had a pretty big wake up call. And so I set out to really figure out, well, how would I build life from my soul? And that's when I came upon this design thinking model at Stanford University. They are the world-renowned experts in product development. Most consultants, design consultants, product consultants, all the big strategic companies use this model. And I started looking into it, and it was like, oh, well, if I'm designing a product, which is my life, and I'm the user of that product, then what if I follow that model to actually design a life I love? Because, when they're designing a new car, the new iPhone or whatever, they don't just like make, 5 million of them and invest in all the technologies and be like, I hope you guys like it and I hope it works.
Right.
There's a process before you actually, go into actually making those products. And so, I started looking into that, and I added a spiritual component based on 7 questions that are in the ancient Old Testament. That story goes, you're at the gates of heaven. There's always the pearly gates of heaven story, right? And you're asked, what did you live your life according to these 7 questions? That will let you know you lived a meaningful life. And my dad had died in 2019, shortly before that ski accident. And I remember when he was like about 24 hours away from passing away, he was mumbling about his credit cards and trying to log into his email to work. And while I was grieving, I also had this little like alert that was like, is this really what it's like at the end? You're like doing an accounting of what you owe and what you've got coming in. And so when I heard about these questions, I was like, did my dad leave a meaningful life? Did I lead? Wait, am I leading? And it all sort of came together. So I'm like, I'm going to follow this design thinking model. I'm going to re-anchor what makes a meaningful life based on these 7 questions. And that's really what my book is about. It's my own journey in figuring this out. And then I teach you the 7 questions, and I teach you this design thinking model and how you can apply it to your own life so that you can align your external life to what really is a soul-driven, soul-designed life.
I love this. So, Marni, can you share with us those 7 questions, or do we have to buy the book?
Well, they're literally on the back cover, and they're on Amazon. But so you can totally know them. But I've done a lot of these interviews, and what's more interesting is if I kind of pick 1 or 2 of them and kind of go more deeply with you, because they all really, really work together. And so I think the first and interesting thing to talk about is that in their original form, I think you'll find this really interesting, especially what you told me about your family and the background and farming and all of these things. So the first question was, in its original form, were you honest in business? Which is really interesting, right? It wasn't like, did you make the most money? Did you have the biggest house? It was, were you honest? And I got very curious about that, about why is that the first question? And so the ancient texts teach us that the writers of this were thinking like, well, money is something that we hold on to, right? Like we're very, we have a lot of issues with money and a lot of greed and fear around money. So they thought if you were honest in regards to money, then you would probably be honest in all parts of your life.
That's probably a good measure, because I always say that integrity is the greatest tool in any person's tool belt. And when I talk to business students, I always say, you might think it's your brains, you might think it's this, you might think it's your schooling, you might think but it's none of those. Your greatest tool is your integrity.
Exactly. So when I looked at that question, I was like, all right, I need to modernize these and make them universal. And so I ended up making the first question about, were you radically honest in your life?
Radically honest.
Yeah, right. Because, and I think that I always say my book is not for quote unquote beginners. What I mean by that is that it assumes that in terms of the 10 commandments, like lie, cheat, steal, that you kind of got that down.
Yeah. I got you.
We're making some assumptions here, right?
Yeah. We're at level 7 now.
Exactly. Because, and we all tell little white lies and things like that. But basically, right, like, I think most people don't lie, but most people aren't honest with themselves. They lie to themselves.
Oh, yeah.
They bullshit themselves.
That's the number one thing.
Right?
Yeah.
I just had a client that I was talking to, and she was really struggling, and she was like, I'm just feeling really challenged right now, and but I'm saying my affirmations and I'm doing my practice, but I just don't believe it. And I was like, well, yeah, that's the problem, right? You're lying. You're trying to lie to yourself, and your soul picks that up as dissonance, right? And so it's not true to you. So actually that's great news, because we just need to go in and figure out like really what's going on, right? Like you have to believe in yourself. And so because we want on our deathbeds, we don't want to be thinking about our credit cards. I would love for you rather to be thinking like, wow, I left no stone unturned. I was honest with myself. I didn't stay in the marriage for longer than 28 years. I didn't tolerate that job. I didn't like let people treat me like crap. I was honest with myself, right? And so it's a really important thing to think about in terms of if you really start to switch your meaning of fulfillment and success to this stuff that's 100% in your control, which is like, well, yeah, am I honest with myself? Am I in integrity with myself? I mean, others, yes, but also myself.
Yeah. When I help people with, one of the things I do is I help people in a fitness journey and a health journey. Because part of that process of being in there for 28 years, at age 50, I found myself at 284 pounds. And
I would never even imagine that.
Yeah, me either. And I didn't see that as my life, but that's where because I was not in control and not loving myself, and I was allowing these things in my life. That was part of the consequence. So I've helped a lot of other people in the journey of how do I do this without surgery, pills, injections? How do I claim my fitness level? But this being honest with yourself is one of the keys. Because when I talk with them, like, on week 2 or something, it'll be like, I haven't really seen any results. And I said, well, so I follow through up, what about this? And have you been doing this? And what does this process look like for you? And they're all in denial. If they have not moved the needle, they're like, oh, I'm totally doing that. I've been every day, but I know. So they're not just lying to me, they're lying to themselves. And when they do that, you cannot move the needle.
100%. And that's, and I think that we develop coping skills, right? To make sure we're not a puddle on the floor. We figure out ways to cope and rationalize and intellectualize. And we just try to look for the silver lining in everything, and, toxic positivity and all of these things, right? Because nobody wants to be the friend or the partner that's like, not happy or complaining, right? So we tolerate a lot of things in our lives. And one of them is around time. We lie to ourselves about time.
Explain
people,
that. I'm really curious about that.
Yeah. So I think that, there's 2 things that I really see in this. One is that people have time scarcity. Right?
Yes.
So the story that they might tell in the fitness journey is, I don't have time to exercise, or I don't have time to meditate, or I don't have time to do whatever. I interviewed someone on my show, and I don't know where he got this, but I'm going to repeat it. He said, if you don't have 5 minutes to meditate, then take 30 minutes to meditate.
Oh, I've heard that too. Yeah. And I think that's absolutely right. Yeah.
Right. And so but it's a lie that we tell us that we don't have time. So I did a little experiment over the last 2 weeks. We're recording this like right around the holidays. And I made this conscious effort I just didn't want to do social media. It wasn't feeling good. And I was like, I'm just going to follow it. Anyway, so I realized I cut out 2 hours a week.
Oh, good for you. Oh,
right?
That's amazing. Yes.
For 2 weeks in a row. Okay. Now, yeah, I use my phone for business and I have to be on blah, 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 blah. But I was like, I was shooting on myself. I should post. I should do that. And I was just like, I'm not doing anything that's not really resonant. And so I came up with 4 extra hours in my week. So if I have 4 extra hours, that means that you, listener, have at least 20 minutes, right? And so we lie to ourselves about time that way. The second way, Mary, that we lie to ourselves is I call it time denial. Because we're waiting for one day, right? Like we're not actually understanding that every minute and every day and every breath is actually precious, that it could end at any time. And how many women have you talked to that you work with that have like every December 31st for 10 years have said, this is the year I'm going to lose weight, right? And then they're like, oh no, I couldn't do it then because, it was like, I had this thing and then I was I had to do that. And then I went on a trip to Italy and then then it was summer and then it's too late. And right. And so we don't understand that we're not given extra time, at leisure, right? And we're waiting to start living our life for the one day when this thing happens. And I can't tell you how many people, and I'm sure you have this too. Like someone just messaged me on Messenger, Facebook Messenger, responding to something. And I looked back and she's been telling me she's single since 2011.
Oh, okay.
Talking about like, I really should hire you someday. And now it's 2025 and she's like, I'm still in New York and I'm still single. And what I'm saying
and still stuck
and still following me.
Yeah.
Right. Like bless. But the bottom line is my new mantra is instead of waiting for one day, what would it look like? What's one thing you can do to make today day one? Right? Make today day one of whatever it is, a small action that you take that is honest with yourself, that is not just tolerating. Even if I was thinking back to some journal thing I was looking at. This is very simple, but I'm sure y'all can relate. I had this time in my life for like 2 or 3 months where my charger didn't really work right for my computer. And I had to like really jam it in there to get it to go. And then all of a sudden, like I wouldn't notice that it had like moved a millimeter. Okay. Sure. And then all of a sudden my computer was like on 2%. And then it dies and you're running around your house. Okay. I was like, these are the things that we are just tolerating. Oh, I don't have time. It's too hard. I don't know which one to get.
Yeah.
Just do it. Just do it. Day one. Literally, you are capable of doing hard shit. Whatever that is, today, figure out how to do it. Take a risk. Be courageous. Put yourself out there. So time denial, time scarcity, 2 big lies we tell ourselves.
I love that. When I first met my husband, which is about 4 years ago, and we've been married now 8 months, so we're newlyweds.
Nice. I love that. Congratulations.
But he was kind of like, well, I better research that. I better read on that. I don't know if that's the best one. I'll go to the store first. And, I'm like, and then he began watching my life, how I accomplished so much. Only touch something once, I say. And then it's Amazon, get it here, blah, blah. Well, what if you don't like it? I send it back. Do you know what I mean? And I pay the $6 to have Amazon come and pick it up and package it. And you can move through life really quickly and efficiently now. That is the purpose of all this advancement. So we have more time to spend on those things that truly matter to us. I love this time. You called it what? What was that time?
Time denial and time scarcity.
Time denial and time scarcity. Wow.
Like I had a client who was telling me she's so busy, an executive woman, single mom, 2 amazing kids, teenagers. I'm so busy I have to wake up at 3 a.m. and do the laundry. I was like, what? So her thing was, her time scarcity was because she wasn't setting any boundaries and she wasn't delegating. She was over functioning and taking on everything because she believed a good mom should. She was overcompensating for being a working mom. So she was volunteering for like literally everything. I'm going to sew the costumes for the theater. I'm going to make the cookies, and I would never buy them. I have to bake them. And she was making all this stuff in her life, right? Because she was afraid, because of her childhood growing up in an alcoholic home and having to like manage things and do stuff to be approved and get love, right? And keep things calm. And so I was like, girl, time scarcity is at your own doing. You have time. So what are we going to start doing in terms of like changing the way that you say yes? And she developed this mantra that was, I matter.
I love that.
Right? And before she said yes to things, she'd first say, well, if I matter, then what would I do? And it changed everything. So there's so many opportunities for you to look at your life and do an honest, compassionate assessment. Just in that one question, were you radically honest?
You know, I had the hardest time saying no, because especially as women and as mothers, we grow up with a huge list of things we should do. We should bake the cookies. We should attend all the functions. We should do this. If you're a good mom, here's your should list. And we have that list. It's ours. And I had a hard time saying no to people. Even as an accomplished CEO, I had a hard time. And managing my own time. And finally, I realized that I did not have the words to say no. Because when I said no, it sounded like, I'm sorry, I can't do that. I couldn't say I'm going to put me first. I could not let those words come out of my mouth. I was just like, couldn't do it. So finally, I decided I needed the words, and I came up with them, and it has been like transformation. I now say, I love what you're involved with. It does speak to my heart. So I validate them first. At the current time, I'm involved in XYZ projects that are really consuming most of my bandwidth. And I would want to make sure that you have someone on your team or committee that can give you what you need. And I'm not that person right now. So maybe in a year or two, my bandwidth shifts and you could come back to me. But right now, I want you to have what you need for this great project.
I love that. I came up with like 10 ways to say no. For personal, professional, holiday, right? Like, thanks for thinking of me, but I'm going to have to pass this time. Yeah. I'm flattered you ask. I can't commit to this right now. I appreciate the offer. I need to focus on my project.
Right?
Right? That sounds great. I already have plans. Let's try something another time. I'd love to. I'm focusing on personal downtime this week. Literally, the words are so important. And
they are.
And so you could re-listen to this episode and write them all down. Yeah. And Mary and I just gave you, again, radical honesty.
Yes. And it sounded like something. In fact, it was something because I came up with it. It was something that I would say. I would be empathetic about what they're doing. Yeah. And I would want to support them. Not that I should, but I would want. That's different. That I would want to support them, but I also want to support me and my new journey. And to be able to say that was so freeing. Marni, I have one last thing I want to talk about before we end. Okay. So there may be, and I'm sure there is, women who are listening, because 85% of my audience are women. Okay, so they're, but some men as well, who may not understand the shoulds in their life that they are putting on themselves. They're like, well, I don't think I do this should thing, even though I help people point out by saying, did you just say should? Could you change that to could?
Yep.
But so if they're not aware of these cultural and mindset that they developed and the lenses from their growing up, how do you raise people's awareness to what the shoulds in their life are? And what are some examples of shoulds that you see people unconsciously putting in their life?
Yeah. So I always use this metaphor of like a fantasy movie that you watch, like maybe if you watch Marvel movies, or a lot of women I talk to love Bridgerton, right?
Okay.
But when you get involved in a show or a book or a movie like that, the author spends a lot of time building the world, right? Like you believe it, like there's a blip, we all disappeared, like whatever it is, and if it's well done, you are totally immersed and you think that is the truth. And so we all have built worlds in our own heads that is different from every single other humans about the rules of your world, right? And they can be like the car you drive, to the clothes you wear, to how much money you need to make, what jobs are high status, and that gives you more value, what size you should wear, your hair color, everything. Like if you should write a thank you note, you do with your
I'm still shitting on the thank you note.
Right? Bringing literally like bring a gift bring a hostess gift. I'm not saying any of those things are bad. I'm saying that we have these things that we just do automatically because it was told to us. And when my dad was dying, one of the things that I really got clear on, because my mom had already passed away, and I was like, I am the matriarch of this family. It is my responsibility to decide what legacy do I want to bring forward and what limiting beliefs do I want to let go and die with his generation. It is literally on me. And I need to be rigorous and honest and really look at everything that I was told is true and question it so that I can be free. Because true freedom is not needing to be free from anything. So if I'm looking at every single thing and I go, question assumptions. There's a great book by a guy named Greg McKeown called Essentialism. And he just basically says that we have to really get clear on what is truly essential to who we are, what we do, how we do it, and our core motivations. And everything needs to be a choice. And so when you think about the voice in your head, whether it's your mother, your grandmother, your teacher, your professor, your boss,
my mother, always ago, my mother.
Yeah. Most of the time in this work, it's our mothers. Be like, why is that true? I went through that in my business, Mary, when I changed my business completely. Someone was like, you don't have to have a sales page. You could just throw up a Google document. And I was like, really? I thought that's what you should do. You should do it, right? Systems, right? Like systems in your business, systems in the way I've had clients who be like, I could never use like a Instacart or some kind of like shopping app. Why? Because I should have enough time to go to the store. I shouldn't okay, maybe yes, maybe no, but literally like make a conscious choice. So you have rules. You aren't aware of them. Start looking at every single thing you do and ask yourself, why am I doing this?
Yes. I love that. This is a really self-reflective time. And now that we are in the new year and your book is like launching, this is a wonderful time to really be examining our own personal lives. And maybe this is the year when it could be for the last time that you make this decision. Wouldn't that be something? The last time you make this decision.
Yeah, I always say to people, don't you want to have a new problem?
Right?
Right? Like, it's boring. I don't know. One of my core values is new and novel. So if I have the same problem for a really long time and I can't fix it, I really want to know like how I can have a new problem. And so if I look back on how I designed my life in the last 5 years following this design thinking model, and now my new problem is I love my life and my town and what I'm doing so much that I'm not traveling enough, right? Because I made my home a destination. When I lived in LA, even though it is a destination to some people, I just always wanted to get out of there. Like, I just like, let's go on a trip here, let's go on a trip there. And now my problem is, wow, how do I balance exploration with also loving and being rooted in a home and building community? Oh, yay, I have a new problem. Thank God. Get a new problem Marni, in 2025.
Our conversation today has just been really enlightening for me. I've learned a lot. And I'm excited for your new book to come out and for my listeners to really come to this point of, can I have a re-examined life? Can I really look, is this pattern that I thought I should be doing bringing me joy? Joy is the biggest part. It's not about being happy. Happy is fleeting. It's, oh, I'm happy today, or I'm not happy today, I'm happy here. But joy is with you always. And I want this to be the year that we all choose ourselves and choose joy. So thank you for your time, Marni.
Thank you, Mary.
To my listeners, please check out the end of the podcast with all the connections for Marni, where you can find her book and how you can follow her on Instagram and LinkedIn. She has lots of clips from her own podcast, which is freaking amazing because I listened to a couple of them before I did this with Marni, and you are very good, very good. Yeah. All right, listeners, this is your day. This is your week. We're done with those shoulds, but what could you do with your life as you craft a meaningful life? Thank you for being with us.
Crafting a Meaningful Life.